So today's chapter is on play. What? Anyway, so this topic was difficult for Sopher to write because he said it took him a long time to lighten up in his life. You know, he was that classic hardworking person that we all admire, and probably most of us here are that kind of person. We know how to get things done. I personally can really relate to that, to his comment. I'm a former A+ student, recovering perfectionist. The work is never done. But because of mindfulness and meditation, thankfully, I've learned a much different way to engage with life. And this topic of play, I took a double take, but actually it's incredibly relevant. And so I want to share some things with you today that I hope will get you thinking. And the reason it's relevant is the Plum Village nuns are very encouraging to people who go visit there to do nothing. The encouragement is always to do nothing when you're trying to heal or trying to touch into a measure of peace within you. That peace that actually exists inside of you. When you're trying to access it, the advice is stop. Do nothing. Not for the whole day, obviously, but take some time. We have the 5-minute do nothing meditation. It's wildly helpful. Do that today, and you might suddenly be like, oh, wait, play, yes. There's a certain playfulness that sort of naturally arises. But in thinking about coming here and talking with you about this topic, I decided to play around and call a bunch of people and see what they thought about it. Like, what do the people in my life, how do they think about play? Because it's not something at the top of the list of things that I think about. And it was super interesting. So there basically were, I would say, two types of responses. There was one that was an outlier. That was the first one. I'll mention that one first. The very first person I asked said, oh, I didn't have too many play genes at birth, and then whatever I had, my parents sort of squashed out of me. And then I said, well, wait a minute. I know you play golf, don't you? Isn't that playful? And this person said, there is nothing playful about that. So that person had a lot of awareness right away of the absence of play in their life. But in general, they fell into two categories asking people. It was either, I called them the brick walls, where it was like, I asked the question and there was like a little bit of confusion and a long pause, as if it hadn't been thought about in a long time. And then talking maybe about the different work that they do or have done that perhaps has gotten in the way of play or has justified the lack of play. But then kind of coming more to an idea of maybe what play isn't. And then maybe coming to more of an idea of what play is. So those were there was a bucket of people that was that. It was like definitely not an easy thing to think about and talk about, but then quickly came down into the place of awareness of what it is. And then the other bucket of people were people who were very much in touch with the idea of play for different reasons. I will say it was younger people or people with access to young people. So there was a like that age thing, this closer you are to childhood or have access to, people in childhood, there's a quicker understanding of play. So the person who described it the best, I would say, said something like this on what play is. It's like this idea of being childlike, this idea of being silly. And the person went like, kind of like, bleh. Being able to do that and not worrying that somebody is judging you for it. They also said, it's not necessarily an activity, it's more something that it's like a feeling. This idea of play is kind of sort of a energy that you bring, which is interesting. They mentioned doing nothing in particular is very important. Like, you're not really doing anything. You might be doing something, but you're not really doing anything important. And they linked it to childhood and mentioned that being with a childhood friend would allow that feeling of play to come up more easily. They obviously had childhood friends. And there was an idea of being with friends also encourages that. And so, yeah, it's not easy, the idea of play. For some of us it is easy, but I think by and large, from my own experience and all these different people I talk to, it's not one that comes quickly, and it's because we feel like we have to be serious. I mean, we live in serious times. Life is serious. It's a big deal to be in a life, so we got to be serious. However, I have a joke to that point. A man goes to his doctor and says, "Doctor, I'm terrified of dying. What can I do?" The doctor says, "Have you tried playing more?" The man says, "Doctor, I'm serious." The doctor says, "So am I. Nobody on their deathbed ever said, 'I wish I'd been more serious.'" Interesting. Judith isn't here today, but she sent me last week. It was like the universe was talking. She sent me a link to Laugh Yoga. Has anyone here ever heard of Laugh Yoga? I had never heard of Laugh Yoga, and I was so intrigued. She had sent it, I think, in the evening, and I opened it, and I was so intrigued I had to log on immediately to their next meeting because I couldn't not. And I'm in a lot of pain. I can barely move. I was like, no, I'm going to take this yoga class because I just got to find out what this is. And it was crazy. There was about 100 people on the call from all over the world, and they meet every day. They have a lot of different teachers, licensed Laugh Yoga teachers worldwide. They go to all kinds of places around the world and do these big group sessions, which you can see on their videos, which are hilarious. And during this Zoom call, they do these completely silly exercises that are designed for someone with the attention of a 3-year-old, which I was like, perfect, that works for me. And it was things as ridiculous as, and so I got on the call just to see, just out of curiosity. It's 45 minutes long. I'm going to stay for 10 minutes and just see what it is. And I was very skeptical because it's just ridiculous. And they did things like, they started you out with the angry laughing. So the instructions were to wag your finger and laugh. So I was like, so I'm on the computer, I have my thing turned off, like, Evelyn and Faye there, like, you don't need to see what I'm doing right here. And I was like, ha 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 ha. I'm like, what is this? This is ridiculous. But I'm following the directions. Ha 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 ha. Okay, that's a kind of laughing, and it feels good because I'm mad because I'm in pain. And then the next one they did was something like you're unzipping your mouth. So you zip your mouth and then you unzip it and the laugh comes out. So you're like, preposterous. And I'm in my bedroom, nobody else is home, making all these crazy sounds. And I can be completely honest. It was great. I kept staying for a few minutes longer and a few minutes longer. You know, and you get to see they highlight different people whose cameras are on who would like to be seen. They highlight them, but you highlight them and you got to see different people, normal, everyday people, young and old, and, you know, in this country and that country doing things, you know, beautifully or awkwardly, whatever. So much to say that this silliness, it was a complete play experience, one that I haven't had in as long as I can remember, and it was utterly satisfying. And, you know, it felt so good. It felt almost kind of like an essential thing that I was missing, like a vitamin, like my vitamin D that I take every day. I was like, I think I need this, you know, and I'm a pretty goofy person, but I think there's always room for more. You know, it felt good on a sort of core energy level. So I want to read to you this paragraph from Sopher's book that pretty much sums it all up, this idea of the value of play. He writes, well, the quote at the beginning is from George Bernard Shaw. We don't stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. Then he says, so this first paragraph I'll read, he says, all mammals play. This is accurate. My cat plays, my dog plays. You see it. You know when a cat is playing, right? Play unlocks a storehouse of vitality in us, supporting healthy social, emotional, and neurological development. As they explore their bodies and emotions through play, children learn to engage, cooperate, set limits, build relationships. Play encourages imagination, creativity, endurance. In humans, playfulness is tied to flexibility, empathy, altruism, problem solving, resilience. Better get on that. Interesting. So interesting. So, you know, what are some common places where people find their play? Right? That's kind of what I want to explore. So, of the people that I guess interviewed, you could say, things like snowboarding, skateboarding, that would be the younger generation, the college kids playing mahjong, not for money, but just for play. Thinking back to my college days, we used to play poker. The kids do bike riding, like mountain biking. Older people go on bike rides. People goof around with friends or mess around, whatever, I don't know what that means, messing around with colleagues at work, goofing around, maybe at lunch hour or something like that. I think of my dad was a heavy socializer. Whenever he was with people, he was always talking and just in a very sort of animated and fun way. I think of my mom cooking, just very much wholeheartedly in the process and enjoying it thoroughly. Reading, a lot of people take have a lot of pleasure in reading. To me, it doesn't feel like play, but it came up for a lot of people. Dancing alone, putting on the music and dancing with other people. making music, listening to music. Animals and children, especially grandchildren, are a really big, big gateway into playfulness. And you see that maybe in yourself or with others when you see an animal, you suddenly change your voice into this like, oh, hello, you know. Same with babies. Oh, it's kind of this playfulness. I have nothing else going on. I'm here with you. In meditation, you can have a lot of playfulness if you're open to it. I know we're always trying to relax. That's a lot of people love to meditate because it's relaxing, and there's playfulness in relaxing, and there's also, if you allow room for, I mean, in my case, I'll just say, I've had stretches where I had a stretch where I had a terribly foul-mouthed presence come into my meditations, cursing and shouting. It was female. And I let her in. I was like, what do you have to say? And I watched her and I was kind of laughing at her. I was like, in the most respectful manner, like, what is this? It was a satisfying, playful moment. So meditation also can be very playful. In fact, I think it needs to be. When things show up, it can be very helpful to laugh. You can be like, oh my God, there's that thing again coming up. I was just focusing on my hands, and then that worry. So it's not the activity that defines your play, right? It's not that, I mean, obviously it helps, right? Doing certain things brings out a sense of playfulness or a playful mindset, but it's really that bringing that mindset is the key. And I have an example would be, so my cousin said she has access to grandkids and spends a lot of time with them, and we've seen them with their grandkids, and she's very quick to get in and play with the kids. So she's got that muscle well developed. And so she was quick to understand this notion of play. And she's like, so I said, well, where do you find your play when you're not with your grandkids? She said, well, when I volunteer at the women's shelter thrift store. I'm like, that sounds like work to me. She's like, oh, no, no, no. She's a workaholic. We have this strain in our family, so we do a lot of work. But she said, when I'm working at the thrift shop there, she said, I have no responsibility. I have no, I'm very in the moment. They tell me what to do, I do it. I need to empty the trash, I do it. They tell me to ring up the things, I do it. Guard the door, whatever. Sort the clothes, I do it. I have no goal outside of the specific thing I'm doing, no expectations. I'm chatting, I'm having fun. And she described that as a very playful time for her. And I believe her. She was pretty excited about the way that the mindset that she brings to that activity. Similarly, like, so that's one example. Similarly, you can imagine activities where they're supposed to be fun, but they're not, right? Like maybe you're in a group and the group leader is trying to get everyone to have a good time, right? And their energy is off. And they're like, they're trying too hard to get you to have fun. And like the whole thing is just kind of an exercise in stressfulness, right? And there you are, you're all playing, but there's no playfulness around. I feel like you see that a lot in our culture. Like you see it, like, I don't know, on TV, there's a certain harshness, like, come on guys, let's have fun. And sometimes it works, but a lot of times it's off. So having that mindset is important, and that mindset, to me, it feels kind of like a lightness. It feels like it's not goal oriented. It's not work oriented, outcome oriented. It's not on a schedule, it's not on a deadline, it's not for money's sake. It's free. It's free from all of that. It's free. Yeah, and it's hard to find that. I mean, we're in a capitalist culture, right? It's money making. Everybody want out to make their money. It's the broth we've been cooking in. So the playfulness gets a little bit covered over. And then, by the way, something very important to mention is that a lot of us were specifically acculturated to not play by our families, right? We were told to grow up. You get punished for being silly. A lot of us were taught that, playing is disrespectful. Or a lot of us, would suffer consequences for horsing around. So, it can honestly feel threatening to be playful. But it's important to remember that that's an acculturation. That's not a fact. It's not a reality. It's actually just a cause and condition that we were subjected to. So now that we're practicing mindfulness and meditation, can we have some awareness as we move through our day and understand better what play is? What is that sense of letting go? We don't need to dance around in public and be silly and goofy if we don't want to, but how can we find that in our own daily activities? I think I'll finish by mentioning Bessel van der Kolk. He wrote The Body Keeps the Score. And I attended a webinar of his maybe a month ago, on trauma. We're in my Sangha, we're always working with ways to be trauma sensitive in our meditation and mindfulness. I mean, just for us, but also for the people at the jail. But it's relevant to all of us, frankly. And after 3 hours of really in-depth exploration of healing from our difficult patterns, Bessel said, he said, in his experience, and he's been researching for a long time with a lot of people, the modalities that are most successful at moving people beyond are healing modalities that are fun. Things that are fun. What that means to you, not to me, because what I think is fun is going to be very different to you, right? But finding those things is important. It's the key.